As more and more Confederate statues come down across the country, President Trump is ramping up his support for keeping them exactly where they are. Here's his series of tweets from this morning. Quote, "Sad to see the history and culture of our great country being ripped apart with the removal of our beautiful statues and monuments. You can't change history, but you can learn from it. Robert E. Lee, Stonewall Jackson, who's next? Washington, Jefferson? So foolish. Also, the beauty that is being taken out of our cities, towns, and parks will be greatly missed and never able to be completely replaced." Shannon Lanier is a FiOS 1 News reporter. He's also a descendant of Thomas Jefferson, a ninth-generation grandson of Jefferson and his slave Sally Hemings. And Shannon disagrees with President Trump.
I think they should be removed from public places because if I am an equal-paying taxpayer, I shouldn't have to be forced to look at this horrible statue of this person who was killing all of my ancestors and vowed to, do everything he can to eradicate my people from this earth. I shouldn't have to be forced and reminded of that, but I think they should not be destroyed. I think all these statues should be placed in a historical place, like a museum, so we can understand the complexity of that time, at that era that those statues came from. That these Confederate statues should not be praised and, celebrated by being put up. That gives people power. Those were statues of power. And by keeping them up, we continue to give those people that power and give them permission to act like this, and more lives will be lost if that's going to continue happening, because these rallies will continue going on, these people will continue showing up. So I think they should just be placed in a place that allows the entire history of that era to be told, to educate people.
The Southern Poverty Law Center has started an online campaign to rally support for taking all of the Confederate monuments down. That group's primary goal is fighting hate crimes by tracking them, educating people about them, and trying to get rid of them. It says there are more than 900 of those monuments in the country right now, and the numbers, they say, are growing. Earlier today, I spoke with the Southern Poverty Law Center's outreach director, Lecia Brooks. Lecia, hate groups and hate crimes both appear to be on the uptick since the rise of prominence of Donald Trump. Is there a correlation, and is there a causal effect?
Yes, Andrew, there's a correlation and a causal effect. During Mr. Trump's campaign, he campaigned on anti-immigrant rhetoric, anti-Muslim rhetoric, and then we saw in the immediate aftermath of the election that uptick in the number of hate and bias-related incidents. It was no surprise to the Southern Poverty Law Center that the motivation behind those hate and bias incidents, the number one motivation was anti-immigrant rhetoric. And so we see that the far right, the extreme right, was emboldened by the Trump win of the presidency. And that continues to this day, and that's what brings us to Charlottesville.
Is there any way to know if Trump is actually inspiring more people to join hate groups or commit hate crimes?
I think that's pretty obvious based on David Duke, who was an early supporter of the Trump campaign, and then what we saw over the weekend and the last couple of days in his tweets on social media about his support of President Trump, and how Trump's trying to make a false equivalency between white supremacists and peaceful protesters is another reason that gave them hope that he is on their side.
Lecia, what's the best way that we can combat those upticks? Is it education, law enforcement, something else?
It's education, I believe. I think that we're having a good discussion in the country today about white supremacy and white nationalism. It's certainly something that has existed for a long time. They had been on the margins, but the Trump presidency has really animated them and emboldened them in a way that has brought them out of the shadows. We need to push them back. We need to say together as a country that supports diversity and tolerance that we will not have it.
As you know, President Trump continues to vocally support Confederate monuments. The Southern Poverty Law Center has a campaign to have those monuments taken down. Why is that campaign so important?
It's critically important because it's a part of our history. The Southern Poverty Law Center issued our report, Whose Heritage, in the immediate aftermath of the Charleston massacre. All over the South, there are memorials to Confederate people who were responsible for causing great pain to African Americans in this country. It's a symbol to us in terms of the racism that existed in the past and continues to exist in the present. it's important to note, contrary to what President Trump said, is that we're not trying to erase history. The Southern Poverty Law Center's report seeks to remove Confederate memorials and monuments from public spaces. We also seek to change the names of all schools. There are public schools that are named after so-called Confederate heroes. We think that that is wrong, and we want them to be moved to a place where children can have an education, a full contextual education about these Confederate leaders.
And some of those changes have even happened in the confines of New York City, which I think surprises a number of people. Lecia, we know that Charlottesville did not happen at random. Some white supremacists and militia members have called it a major success, that they say it was to show the nation it's not just an online movement, but a real world one. Do we know what their agenda is?
Their agenda is to take back the country. If we could kind of go back to President Trump's campaign slogan, and again, David Duke echoed that. He said that the Charlottesville rally was them bringing that dream come true, making America great again, answering the promise of President Trump's election. I think that it makes me very sad to hear them say that they saw it as a victory. It was a very, very sad day for our country. A woman, Heather Heyer, as you know, lost her life. 19 people were injured. It should in no way be celebrated. And we are heartened by the fact that people of conscience are standing up against it.
We know that the so-called alt-right and sites like the Daily Stormer engage in hate speech and spread it. Is there a way to muzzle that kind of speech without violating the First Amendment?
Well, Andrew Anglin is the publisher of the Daily Stormer, which is a vile and awful anti-Semitic, racist website. Now, he has every right to host that website and put on it whatever he likes. The Southern Poverty Law Center recently filed a lawsuit against him because he called for a troll storm against our client, calling on his readership to harass our client. And so that is against the law. If we find the Southern Poverty Law Center finds some violation, civil or criminal, then we will bring suit. But he does have a First Amendment right to host that website. The First Amendment covers all speech, including hate speech. That does not prevent us from standing up and saying that that is wrong and from rejecting it.
And finally, given yours and the Southern Poverty Law Center's expertise, can you compare the current climate of hate in America to periods that we've seen in the past? How bad it is now compared to the last time we saw this level of emboldened hate?
You know, it's just frightening to see. When I saw those images, especially Friday night of the torch rally, very reminiscent of, you know, the 1920s, 30s, and 40s, and 50s through the civil rights movement. These are, for some people, and also very reminiscent of the Holocaust. These memories are fresh in people's minds. Some people, you know, who are living today lived through that, and it's very frightening indeed. I don't, you know, can't speak to the level of racism is wrong. I don't want to kind of, you know, put it on a hierarchy. It was worse then, it's worse now. The thing is that it's wrong and it's un-American, and we need to stop it.
Lecia Brooks, the Outreach Director for the Southern Poverty Law Center, thank you for a few minutes, and thank you for your efforts and the work of the Southern Poverty Law Center.
Thank you, Andrew.
Up next, President Trump's relationship with Republicans has always been strained, and now it's getting worse. Is it even possible for them to work together to get anything done? Our panel joins us next.